The sirens tore through the quiet streets like a warning no one could ignore. 3 shots shattered the calm of a late afternoon, echoing against brick walls and asphalt, leaving a silence heavier than fear itself. On the other side, a black woman lay motionless, her life suspended in those terrifying seconds. Inside the courthouse, tension simmered, anger, disbelief, and betrayal clashing in a room too small for the weight of what had just happened. Minutes later, the world would watch as justice wavered on the edge, and one shocking decision would set a courtroom and a community ablaze. Her name was Maya Thompson, a woman whose life had always balanced on the fragile line between hope and hardship. She grew up in a neighborhood where opportunity was scarce, but resilience ran deep in every family she knew. Working double shifts at the local hospital, she carried the weight of her younger brother's school dreams, her mother's weary smile, and the constant undercurrent of a society that often judged her before she even spoke. Every step outside her door felt measured, cautious, as if the world expected her to falter. That Thursday afternoon, the sun hung low over the city, casting long shadows on streets that held both memories and tension. Maya had just finished her shift, exhaustion pressing into her bones, when she noticed flashing lights behind her. A routine traffic stop, or so it seemed, would spiral into a nightmare she could never have imagined. She wasn't just any woman on the street. She carried the invisible weight of history. Every glance from law enforcement, every hurried judgment, echoed centuries of prejudice. Maya's heartbeat raced, not from guilt, but from the raw, unspoken fear that had haunted generations before her. Across town, the courthouse awaited the ripple effect of that day. Inside, judges and lawyers prepared for cases, unaware that the very system meant to protect justice was about to be tested in a way no one could predict. Every small decision, every moment of hesitation, would build toward a breaking point. Maya's world, ordinary and extraordinary at once, was about to collide with systemic injustice in a way that would shake her community, her city, and the nation. And in those minutes before chaos erupted, no one could foresee how quickly a life and a courtroom could ignite in fury and heartbreak. The aftermath of the shots rippled faster than anyone could have anticipated. News helicopters hovered above Maya's neighborhood, their rotors chopping the afternoon air into uneasy fragments, while social media exploded with snippets, angles, and speculation. Neighbors who had once exchanged polite nods now gathered in small, tense clusters, whispering in disbelief. The police tape stretched like a dividing line between normal life and a moment of raw, unfiltered fear. Every detail of the scene, the shattered glass, the smell of gunpowder, the echoes of sirens, seemed to pulse with the injustice that had been carved into history long before Maya stepped onto that street. Inside the precinct, the officer responsible sat quietly, an unsettling calm masking the storm beneath. His actions had ignited a fire he hadn't anticipated. Lawyers, journalists, and activists immediately descended on the case, each with a lens colored by experience, outrage, or ambition. The courtroom became a pressure cooker, every procedural delay and technicality magnifying the emotional stakes. Maya's family, still grappling with shock, found themselves thrust into a spotlight they had never sought, their grief and fear now public property. As the investigation unfolded, the cracks in the system became impossible to ignore. Evidence that should have told a clear story was delayed, altered, or buried under bureaucracy. Witnesses were questioned in ways that hinted at bias, and the courtroom itself seemed to hum with tension. Every day Maya's story lingered in the news feeds and talk shows, inflaming conversations about race, privilege, and power. Friends warned her family to stay cautious. Activists rallied, demanding accountability. City leaders spoke carefully, balancing optics against the outrage that threatened to spill into the streets. Meanwhile, Maya's own inner world swirled with disbelief and fear. How could a routine moment, just driving home, be twisted into a life-threatening encounter? How could the society she had worked so hard to navigate seem so eager to dismiss her humanity? These questions haunted her, gnawed at her resolve, and sharpened the sense of urgency that had begun to define every waking moment. And as the courtroom prepared to convene, the air felt charged with inevitability. The rising tension wasn't just legal, it was cultural, societal, deeply human. Every viewer of the unfolding drama, every resident of the city, every person watching from afar felt it. The collision of justice and injustice, fear and hope, history and the present. Something monumental was about to happen. The countdown to the climax had begun. Minutes away from the courtroom doors opening, the world held its breath. Every heartbeat, every whispered conversation, every camera lens focused on Maya carried the weight of generations who had endured similar indignities. The stage was set, and the eruption, long overdue, was about to sweep through the city like a storm no one could contain. The courtroom doors creaked open and the air inside felt impossibly heavy. Every seat was filled, every eye was fixed. Maya sat with her family, their hands clutched tightly together, knuckles white, breaths shallow. Outside, the city seemed to hold its collective breath, waiting for the moment that would define not just one life but the measure of justice itself. The officer walked in with a calm that seemed almost rehearsed, a quiet confidence that enraged some and unnerved others. As the case unfolded, the evidence was laid bare. Video footage, witness testimonies, and reports that painted a stark contrast between Maya's lived reality and the narrative the officer had tried to construct. Yet every piece of proof seemed to hang in the balance, as if the walls themselves were unsure of which way the verdict would tilt. Tension rippled through the courtroom like a living thing. Each objection, each hesitant pause, magnified the emotional gravity of the moment. Maya's heart pounded as if echoing the collective anxiety of everyone in the room. She remembered the shots, the abruptness of violence, the unfairness seared into her memory. Every second stretched endlessly, every glance from the jury a silent verdict before words were spoken. Then it came, the announcement that would ignite the world. The officer's actions were deemed negligent, a violation of trust that could not be ignored. But the consequences, the penalty, were meted out with a precision that felt both vindicating and insufficient, leaving a mix of relief, outrage, and disbelief swirling together like a storm. For a moment, the courtroom held the weight of history itself, the echoes of centuries of injustice pressing down on the present. And then, as the gavel struck, a single moment shattered the fragile calm. A scream of disbelief, a collective gasp, and the realization that justice, while pursued, had not erased the pain, fear, or anger that had led to this day. Maya's world, and the world watching, was forever changed. In that instant, the courtroom was no longer just a place of law. It was a crucible of emotion, identity, and the unflinching truth of systemic inequity. The courtroom emptied, but the echoes of that day lingered like a shadow that refused to fade. Maya stepped outside into the late afternoon sun, her family close, but still grappling with the whirlwind of relief, anger, and exhaustion. The verdict was a statement, but it wasn't a cure. It couldn't erase the fear that had gripped her when the shots rang out, nor the generations of injustice that had paved the way for that moment. Yet it was a spark. A reminder that accountability, however imperfect, was possible. In the days that followed, protests and vigils filled streets across the city, voices rising in a chorus that demanded systemic change. Conversations unfolded in homes, schools, and workplaces, forcing people to confront the uncomfortable truths that Maya had always known. That race could dictate perception, treatment, and survival in ways that were both subtle and brutally overt. Her story became a symbol, not because she wanted fame or attention, but because her experience reflected the lived reality of so many who had been silenced. Maya herself carried the weight of dual truths, the relief of surviving, and the sorrow for the countless others who had not. She found strength in community, in collective action, and in the knowledge that change began when stories like hers were told, listened to, and remembered. Every step she took forward became a testament to resilience, courage, and the unwavering demand for justice. As the sun set over the city skyline, the question lingered in the hearts of all who had witnessed her journey. How long would it take for society to confront these patterns, to dismantle the structures that allow injustice to persist? Maya's story didn't offer easy answers, but it demanded reflection. It demanded empathy. It demanded action. If this story moved you, made you think, or sparked emotions you couldn't ignore, don't let it end here. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below with your thoughts and reflections. And most importantly, remember that every voice counts, because awareness is the first step toward change.